The sun burned like fire over the endless red sands of the desert. The sky was a harsh, bright white, and the wind carried fine grains of sand that stung the skin like tiny needles. Jared wiped the sweat from his brow and adjusted the straps of his pack. He had been walking for hours, searching for the rare minerals that glinted under the sunlight like tiny stars scattered over the sand. The desert was unforgiving, but Jared had survived worse. Humans, he thought, were built for this, adaptable, clever, and determined. Ahead, the heat shimmered, and the horizon wavered as if it were a mirage. Jared squinted. Something, or someone, was moving. At first, he thought it was another traveler, but as he got closer, he realized the figure was stumbling, almost falling with each step. The figure was not human. Its shape was tall and elegant, with smooth, pale skin that almost glowed under the sun and long limbs that moved awkwardly as if weakened by pain. Jared's instincts kicked in. He ducked behind a dune and watched. The figure fell again, and a soft sound of distress escaped its lips. Without thinking twice, Jared ran toward it, the sand burning his feet. He had no idea what this creature was, but he knew it needed help. When he reached the figure, he saw the full extent of the injuries. The alien was lying on the sand, her breathing shallow, and her right arm bent at an unnatural angle. Her clothing, elegant and unlike anything Jared had ever seen, was torn and covered in blood. She looked up at him with wide amber eyes that shone with fear and something else, a quiet, desperate hope. "Are you okay?" Jared asked, keeping his voice calm. He needed to reassure her, even though he had no idea if she could understand him. The alien tried to speak, but her voice was weak, almost a whisper. Jared crouched closer. The desert sun beat down on them, relentless. He knew that if he didn't act fast, she wouldn't last until nightfall. "Don't worry, I'll help you," he said. He scanned the surroundings. There was no water in sight, no shelter, nothing but sand stretching for miles. The nearest settlement was at least 100 miles away, and even Jared, strong and experienced, couldn't run that far in these conditions alone. Carrying her would be even harder, but he didn't hesitate. Humans, he thought, were stubborn and brave. They did what needed to be done, even when it seemed impossible. Jared carefully lifted her, supporting her broken arm and trying not to hurt her further. She made a soft sound, a mixture of relief and pain, but did not resist. He adjusted the straps of his pack and wrapped a makeshift cloth around her arm to hold it steady. Her eyes followed his every move, curious and cautious. "I'm Jared," he said, trying to sound friendly. "I'm going to get you out of here." The alien's lips moved again, and Jared caught a few sounds that didn't resemble any human language. But she nodded faintly, as if acknowledging his words. He felt a strange connection already, a silent understanding that transcended words. The desert stretched endlessly before them, a sea of red and gold. Every step was a struggle. The sand was soft and each foot sank deep, making progress slow. The sun blazed overhead, and the heat rose from the ground in waves that made the world shimmer. Jared could feel the sweat running down his back, soaking his shirt. His legs ached, but he forced himself forward. Sometimes the alien groaned in pain, and Jared would stop to check her injuries. He whispered encouragement, telling her to hang on. Humans, he thought, survived because they never gave up. And he wouldn't give up on her. Not now. Not ever. Hours passed. The desert seemed endless, but Jared noticed faint signs of movement in the distance. Tiny rocks that jiggled as if disturbed by creatures, shadows that flitted quickly across the sand. Desert predators, he realized. The alien queen, or whatever she was not safe even from nature itself. He kept moving, alert to every sound. His mind raced with thoughts of how dangerous this desert could be. Yet he also felt a strange exhilaration. Humans thrived in adversity. He had survived countless challenges on Earth, and now he faced one unlike any other. And he wasn't alone. He carried someone who depended entirely on him. At midday, the sun was a merciless ball of fire. Jared found a small ridge and sat her down for a brief rest. He tore a piece of cloth from his shirt and wetted it with water from his flask, pressing it against her forehead. The alien closed her eyes and sighed, the sound faint but grateful. "You're strong," she said, her voice a soft, melodic whisper. Jared didn't understand the words, but her tone was clear. She trusted him. Jared smiled. "You're going to be okay. Just a little further." He scanned the horizon again. The nearest shelter was a small rock formation, perhaps 10 miles away. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. He would get her there before nightfall. As they moved again, the alien's strength seemed to falter. Her legs were weak, and her breathing shallow. Jared gritted his teeth. Humans were resilient, he thought, and he would make up for her weakness with his strength. Step by step, he carried her through the sand, ignoring his own fatigue. A sandstorm began to rise in the distance, the wind picking up and carrying grains of sand that stung like fire. Jared shielded her with his body, leaning forward to push through the harsh wind. Every step was a battle, every gust of wind a new obstacle. Yet he pressed on. Humans thrived because they faced impossible odds and overcame them. He would survive this storm and get her to safety. By late afternoon, their progress was slow but steady. The sun hung low, casting long shadows across the dunes. Jared noticed the alien looking at him more closely now. Her amber eyes were wide, studying his face, as if trying to understand him. There was no fear now, only trust. He felt a strange warmth in his chest. Humans could form bonds quickly, even with strangers, and apparently some bonds could even cross species. He didn't know what she was. He didn't need to. What mattered was that she needed him, and he would not fail. As the sun began to sink, painting the sky in deep oranges and reds, Jared spotted the small ridge again. It was within reach. With renewed energy, he pushed forward, ignoring the pain in his muscles, the blisters on his hands, the burning in his lungs. Nothing mattered except getting her there. Finally, after hours that felt like days, they reached the ridge. Jared gently lowered her to the ground, giving her a chance to rest. She closed her eyes and let out a quiet sigh, her chest rising and falling more steadily. He smiled. "You made it," he said softly. "We're safe for now." The alien opened her eyes and looked at him, a faint glimmer of something. Gratitude, admiration, maybe even something deeper, shining in them. Jared didn't know what it meant yet, but he felt it too. As night fell, the desert cooled slightly, and the stars began to twinkle in the dark sky. Jared set up a small shelter with his gear, making a space for the alien to rest comfortably. She looked around at the tiny camp, her eyes taking in everything carefully, and then finally relaxed. Jared watched her for a moment. Humans had a saying. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. He felt that now, standing under the alien stars, carrying someone across a burning desert, knowing he had saved her life. The desert night was cold, a sharp contrast to the scorching day. Jared had built a small shelter using his gear and some rocks he found nearby. The alien queen, Lyra, as he had learned to call her after she slowly spoke her name, was resting, though her breathing was still shallow. Jared sat beside her, keeping watch. The desert was full of dangers, and sleep could wait. He knew they had a long journey ahead. The nearest safe settlement was at least 90 miles away, a distance that seemed impossible in the scorching heat of day, the freezing cold of night, and across the shifting sands that could swallow a man whole. Yet Jared was determined. Humans thrived in adversity. They adapted, they endured, and he would endure for her. By the first light of dawn, he carefully lifted Lyra. Her injuries were severe, her arm hung limply, and her leg bore bruises that made her wince with every step. But she did not complain. She trusted him. Humans, she seemed to realize, could do things no alien could, at least not without technology. They began walking again. Jared carried her in a specially crafted harness, keeping her close to his chest to prevent her from sliding or falling. The sun rose higher and the heat struck immediately. Sweat ran down Jared's face, stinging his eyes, but he ignored it. Each step was a battle, each breath a victory. The desert was testing them, but humans were built for survival. Hours passed, and the landscape barely changed. The sand stretched endlessly, dotted with jagged rocks and occasional dry shrubs. Jared scanned constantly for threats: sand pits, venomous snakes, alien lizards with sharp claws, and predators that could smell a weakened creature from miles away. His senses were alert, his mind calculating, his body pushing forward. Lyra's eyes followed every movement, studying him closely. Despite her pain, there was curiosity in her gaze. She had never seen a human move through such harsh terrain with such determination. Her own people relied on technology, shields, and energy fields, but Jared relied on nothing but his mind, his muscles, and his willpower. She admired him quietly, though she did not speak much. By midday, the sun was a blazing fire overhead. Jared found a small depression between two dunes and lowered her carefully. He tore a piece of cloth from his shirt and wetted it with water from his flask, pressing it against her forehead. She closed her eyes, letting out a soft sigh. Humans, she thought, were remarkable. They suffered, yet they endured. They protected, even when the odds were against them. "You're going to be okay," Jared said. "Just a little further. We'll make it." Lyra nodded faintly, her amber eyes shining with gratitude. She tried to speak, but her voice was barely a whisper. Jared didn't need to understand her words. Her tone told him everything. She trusted him. They continued, moving slowly but steadily. Jared took short breaks every few miles, checking her injuries and sharing small amounts of water. Each time he rested, he thought about the journey ahead. 90 miles. That was almost impossible for one human in this desert. For him, carrying Lyra, it seemed like a dream too harsh to endure. But he would not stop. Humans never stopped. The sun climbed high, and the heat became unbearable. Jared could feel his skin burning, his muscles aching, and his lips cracking from dehydration. But he pressed on. Every step was a triumph. Every mile conquered was a victory of human willpower. Suddenly, a shadow moved in the distance. Jared froze, scanning the sands. A creature emerged from behind a rock, a desert predator, large and fast, with jagged teeth and claws. It growled, low and menacing, and began stalking toward them. Jared didn't panic. Humans thrived because they could think under pressure. He set Lyra down gently and drew a small knife from his pack. The predator lunged. Jared dodged and swung the blade with precision, hitting the creature's leg. It howled and retreated, disappearing into the sands. Lyra's eyes widened. "Humans fight with nothing?" she whispered. Her voice was weak but filled with awe. Jared smiled. "We fight with whatever we have, and we fight to protect those who cannot protect themselves." They continued their trek, the predator incident leaving Lyra silent but impressed. Humans, she realized, had courage she had rarely seen, even among her own warriors. And this human, this man, carried her across a desert that could kill even the strongest alien soldiers. By late afternoon, the heat reached its peak. The sand burned underfoot, and the sun's glare was blinding. Jared found a small cave and rested with Lyra inside. It was barely enough to protect them from the sun, but it offered a moment of relief. Jared examined her injuries again. Her arm was swollen, her leg bruised. He wrapped them tightly with strips of cloth, hoping to stabilize them for the next leg of the journey. Lyra watched him silently, her eyes reflecting a growing admiration. Humans, she thought, were more than creatures. They were heroes, born to endure and protect. The night brought no rest. The desert became freezing, and wind swept through the small cave. Jared kept a small fire going, sharing its warmth with Lyra. She shivered, her body exhausted from the journey, and Jared covered her with a blanket he had carried. "You are strong," she said softly, her voice filled with emotion. "Stronger than I imagined." Jared smiled. "Humans survive. That's what we do, and we protect those who need it." The next morning, they resumed their journey. The dunes seemed endless, rising and falling like waves in a blood-red ocean. Jared's muscles ached, his feet were blistered, and his energy was low. Yet he kept moving. Humans were stubborn. They endured pain, hunger, and fear to achieve what others thought impossible. Lyra, despite her injuries, began to offer small help. She held on to Jared's shoulders, giving him support when the sand shifted underfoot. Though weak, she was determined not to be a burden. Jared noticed this and felt respect for her. Humans could endure alone, but they also appreciated those who tried, even when weak. Midday brought another challenge. A sandstorm began to rise, the wind whipping grains of sand into their faces and eyes. Jared shielded Lyra with his body, pressing forward against the storm. Visibility dropped, and the air was thick with flying sand. Each step was a struggle, but he refused to stop. Humans could face nature's fury and survive. Hours passed in the storm. Jared's clothes were torn, his skin raw, and his throat dry. Yet he pressed on, moving mile by mile, step by step. Lyra leaned on him, her trust absolute. He realized then that this journey was more than survival. It was a bond forming, a connection that neither of them fully understood yet. As the sun began to sink, the storm finally died down. The desert returned to its quiet state, with only the wind whispering through the dunes. Jared stopped and lowered, Lyra gently. She looked at him, her amber eyes filled with something new: gratitude, admiration, and perhaps respect. "You are remarkable," she whispered. Jared didn't respond, only nodded. Humans thrived not by seeking praise, but by doing what was right, no matter the cost. By evening, Jared spotted a small ridge in the distance. It wasn't much, but it was a landmark, a promise of safety and rest. With renewed determination, he lifted Lyra again and pressed on. The last few miles of the day were grueling, but humans thrived on challenges. He refused to falter. Finally, as night fell, they reached the ridge. Jared set Lyra down gently, allowing her to rest. Her injuries were severe, but she had survived. Another day. Jared, exhausted but proud, looked out at the endless desert. He had carried her through 100 dangers, and he would continue. Humans never gave up. Humans survived, and Jared would not stop until she was safe. Lyra looked at him once more, her amber eyes glowing in the firelight. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "For everything." Jared smiled. "Rest now. Tomorrow we continue. We will reach safety. I promise." The desert was quiet again, the stars twinkling above. But Jared knew the journey was far from over. 90 miles lay ahead, filled with dangers, obstacles, and tests of endurance. And yet he felt no fear. Humans thrived where others would fail. Humans endured when others would fall. And Jared would carry her across this desert, mile by mile, step by step, no matter what. The desert night was calm, almost peaceful, but the quiet was deceptive. Jared and Lyra rested in the small ridge camp he had made, their shadows stretching under the soft glow of the stars. Lyra's breathing was steadier now, though she was still weak. She had survived the harshest part of the day, and for the first time, she felt a strange sense of safety with the human beside her. Jared tended the small fire, careful not to let it burn too bright. He checked his supplies, rationing what little water they had left. Humans were resourceful, he thought, always finding a way to survive when others would fail. He glanced at Lyra, who was looking at the desert horizon, her amber eyes reflecting the starlight. "You've traveled far," she said softly, her voice barely audible above the wind. Jared nodded. "Humans can cover a lot of ground, and we survive harsh deserts. That's what we do." Lyra tilted her head, studying him. "You endure without help. No technology, no shields. How?" Jared shrugged. "We adapt. We think. We use what we have and never give up. Humans survive because we refuse to stop." She was silent for a moment, absorbing his words. Then she spoke again, quieter this time. "Your people are strong, not just in body, in spirit, in will. I have seen courage before. But this is different." Jared felt a faint warmth in his chest. Humans were proud, not arrogant. They took pride in surviving, in protecting others, but they didn't boast. He said, "We protect those who need it. That's what matters." The wind shifted and Jared's eyes scanned the horizon. A movement caught his attention, small shadows darting across the sand. He tensed. The desert was full of creatures that could smell weakness, and Lyra was still injured. "Stay close," he whispered. "There might be something out there." The shadows drew nearer. Jared saw them clearly now, desert scavengers, alien creatures with sharp claws and glowing eyes. They were fast, vicious, and drawn to injured prey. Jared positioned himself in front of Lyra, holding his small knife ready. Humans thrived because they could think and fight under pressure, and he had learned that skill well. The scavengers lunged. Jared moved quickly, striking one with the flat of his knife, pushing another away with his shoulder. He dodged and twisted, guiding Lyra behind him. Even with injuries, she instinctively followed his lead, showing a surprising resilience. Humans endured, he thought, not only through strength, but through cleverness. Minutes passed, and the creatures finally retreated, frustrated by Jared's defense and the firelight. Lyra exhaled, relief evident on her face. "You fight for me," she said softly. "You risk yourself." Jared smiled faintly. "We protect those who can't protect themselves. That's human nature. You'd do the same for another being." Lyra looked at him differently now. She had seen warriors before, soldiers trained from birth. But humans were different. They could survive, think, and act under pressure without the tools or powers that aliens often relied upon. She felt respect and something more. As the night wore on, the fire burned low and the temperature dropped. Jared covered Lyra with his blanket, ensuring she stayed warm. He felt a strange bond forming between them. Humans could connect with others not just through words, but through action, through trust, and through shared struggle. Lyra had seen it firsthand. "You are remarkable," she whispered again, almost to herself. "Stronger than I imagined, and kind." Jared shrugged, trying to seem casual. "I do what's right. Humans survive, but we also help. That's how we live." Lyra's amber eyes met his, and for the first time she allowed herself to be vulnerable. "I have never met a human like you. My people, they fear humans. They think us weak, fragile. But you are different." Jared looked at her quietly. "Humans surprise people. We endure. We fight. We survive. And sometimes we form bonds stronger than steel." She studied him in silence. The desert wind whispered around them, and the stars shone like diamonds above. For a moment, all danger, all pain, all struggle seemed distant. They were two beings from different worlds, brought together by circumstance, learning to trust and understand each other. The next morning, Jared woke early. The desert was already heating, and they had many miles to cover. Lyra stirred, and he helped her sit up. Her injuries had stabilized slightly, but she was still weak. "We have to keep moving," he said gently. "The oasis is still far, but we can make it." She nodded, her eyes determined. "I will try. I trust you." Jared smiled. Humans could inspire trust, not with words, but with actions. He lifted her carefully into the harness, supporting her injured arm and leg. Step by step, they moved across the dunes. The day was harsh. Sand burned underfoot, and the sun beat down mercilessly. Jared rationed their water carefully, giving Lyra the small sips she needed. He scanned constantly for danger: desert snakes, predators, and the shifting sand itself. One wrong step could be fatal. Humans endured because they combined strength with awareness, courage with intelligence. Hours passed, and the desert seemed endless. Lyra, despite her weakness, began to speak more. She asked about Earth, about human culture, about why humans could survive such extremes. Jared answered simply, telling her about determination, teamwork, and the human will to survive. "You are extraordinary," Lyra said again. "Your people. You do not rely on strength alone. You rely on spirit, courage, and ingenuity." Jared nodded. "That's how we survive. That's how we thrive. We adapt, we endure, and we protect each other." As the sun reached its peak, another challenge appeared. A massive dune shifted suddenly, a small landslide triggered by the wind. Jared barely managed to hold Lyra as the sand cascaded around them. He pressed himself against the slope, using his body to shield her. The sandstorm subsided, leaving them shaken but unharmed. Lyra looked at him, awe in her eyes. "You protect, even against nature. I have never seen this. My people rely on machines, on shields. But you endure everything." Jared smiled, brushing the sand from his face. "Humans survive because we never give up. No matter what the world throws at us, we keep moving forward." By late afternoon, they spotted a small ridge that promised shelter. Jared guided them toward it, his steps slow but steady. Lyra leaned on him, exhausted but trusting. Humans had a stubbornness that allowed them to endure when others would falter. He carried that stubbornness now, carrying her through this alien desert. As night fell, they made camp again. Jared lit a small fire and helped Lyra settle. She looked at him with a mix of respect and curiosity. "You are not like any being I have known," she said softly. "I admire you." Jared nodded. Humans didn't need praise, but it was nice to see that their efforts inspired respect. He covered her with the blanket, ensuring she stayed warm. "We humans endure because it is necessary, and we help those who cannot survive alone. That's all." Lyra's eyes reflected the firelight, glowing softly. "Your people have a strength of spirit. I have never seen it before. I respect you deeply, Jared." Jared smiled faintly. "Then you understand what humans can do, and we'll make it. Step by step, mile by mile, we survive together." The stars shone above, countless points of light in the vast desert sky. Jared and Lyra rested in silence, a bond forming between them. Humans thrived in adversity, and they had survived another day. But more than survival, they had earned trust and respect, an unspoken connection that crossed worlds, species, and cultures. And Jared knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges. The desert was far from conquered, and their journey had only begun. Yet he felt no fear. Humans endured. Humans adapted. Humans protected. And for Lyra, that human resilience had already become more than admiration. It was a force that she could not ignore, a strength that would shape the days to come. The desert night held them in its quiet, but the bond between human and queen had grown stronger. They had survived storms, predators, and exhaustion. They had endured because humans never gave up. And as the stars shimmered above, both Jared and Lyra knew that the journey ahead would test them even more, and that together they could face anything. The sun rose over the desert with a burning orange glow, casting long shadows across the endless red dunes. Jared stretched, feeling the familiar ache in his muscles, but he ignored it. Today was important. They were close to the oasis, a hidden haven in the middle of this unforgiving wasteland. For Lyra, every step was a challenge, but Jared knew they were almost there. Humans endured, and they never stopped when someone's life depended on them. Lyra stirred beside him, her amber eyes fluttering open. She attempted a small smile, but pain pulled at her face. Jared helped her sit up gently. "We're almost there," he said. "Just a little further. You've been amazing." She nodded weakly. "I trust you, Jared. Always." Her voice was soft, yet firm. It carried a sincerity that warmed Jared's heart. He adjusted the harness around her, making sure her injuries were stable for the final stretch. They moved carefully, step by step, across the dunes. The desert was harsh, but Jared had learned to read it. He knew where to step, how to avoid quicksand, and where hidden predators might lurk. Lyra's trust in him grew with every careful motion. She had seen humans survive extremes that no alien technology could easily endure, and she admired them for it. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher and the heat was merciless. Sweat ran down, Jared's face and back soaking his shirt. His feet ached and blisters burned, but he pressed on. Every step was a test of endurance, but humans thrived in tests. That resilience, that stubborn determination, was what kept Lyra alive. "Jared," Lyra said quietly, her voice catching his attention. I cannot imagine what I would have done without you." Jared glanced at her. "You would have survived. You are strong, but even the strongest need help sometimes. And I'm here." He smiled faintly. "Humans survive, Lyra, and we protect those who cannot protect themselves." She studied him, her amber eyes filled with admiration and a hint of something deeper. "Your people have a spirit that is extraordinary. I have seen courage, but this is different. You endure what others cannot, and you do it with kindness." Jared didn't respond with words. He let his actions speak instead, lifting her carefully when the sand became too soft to walk, guiding her around dangerous dunes, shielding her from the scorching sun with the makeshift cloth over her head. Humans endured silently, through sweat, pain, and determination. Finally, after hours that felt like days, they spotted it. The oasis. A small cluster of trees and a sparkling pool of water appeared like a miracle in the middle of the red desert. Birds chirped softly, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves. The sight of life after endless sand was almost magical. Jared's heart lifted. "We made it," he said softly. "You're going to be okay now?" Lyra blinked, taking in the greenery and water. She attempted to rise, but winced in pain. Jared immediately steadied her. "Take it slow. I've got you." He carried her the final few steps to the oasis. Once there, they were greeted by a small settlement of desert nomads, aliens, who had lived in this harsh land for generations. They were wary at first, but when they saw Jared's care for Lyra, they quickly offered help. Medic pods and healing equipment were brought out, and Lyra was gently placed on a cot. The medics worked quickly, examining her injuries. Jared watched, standing quietly by her side. The technology was incredible. Alien energy fields that could repair tissues and stabilize broken bones, but he realized something important. Even with all their advanced tools, Lyra's survival until now had depended on him. Human determination had carried her further than any machine could. Lyra's eyes met his, and she gave a faint smile. "You saved me, even before they could heal me." Jared shrugged, trying to hide the pride he felt. "I did what anyone should do. Humans protect those in need. That's all." Hours passed as the medics worked, and Lyra's condition improved. Her breathing became steady, her injuries stabilized, and color returned to her pale skin. She was still weak, but alive. Jared stayed nearby, refusing to leave her side. Humans, he thought, never abandoned those who depended on them. Once the medics finished, Lyra sat up slowly. She looked at Jared, her amber eyes shining with admiration. "You carried me through 90 miles of desert. 90 miles. I have never. I cannot imagine." She paused, her voice filled with awe. "Your people are remarkable. You are remarkable." Jared felt a warmth in his chest. "We survive, we endure, and we protect. That's what humans do, step by step. Mile by mile, we don't give up." Lyra studied him closely. "I have seen warriors who fight with weapons, shields, and armies. But you have nothing but your courage, your mind, and your heart. And yet you carried me through the impossible. Humans, you are extraordinary." Her words made Jared smile faintly. Humans didn't seek praise, but it was hard not to. Feel proud when someone so extraordinary recognized your strength. He looked at her gently. "You survived because you trusted me. Humans thrive when we work together. That's how we endure." Lyra nodded, still weak, but her gaze never left him. She realized something profound. Humans were not only physically resilient, but their spirit and determination could surpass any alien technology. And Jared, this one human, had shown her the full power of that spirit. As the sun set, painting the oasis in shades of gold and red, Jared and Lyra sat by the water. She dipped her hands into the cool water, marveling at its clarity. "This place. It feels like a miracle," she said softly. Jared nodded. "It is. And you made it here alive. That's the real miracle." He smiled faintly. "Humans survive where others might fail. That's our gift." Lyra turned to him, her expression thoughtful. "I owe you more than I can say. Not just my life, but respect, admiration, maybe even something more." Jared raised an eyebrow, surprised. "Something more?" She hesitated, looking down at her hands. "Humans, you are different. You endure. You protect. You inspire. I feel connected to you in ways I cannot explain." Jared felt a strange warmth, a bond forming that went beyond words. Humans could connect with others through trust, action, and shared struggle. Lyra had seen that firsthand. And now she was beginning to understand something deeper, a connection that crossed species, culture, and even worlds. The night grew calm. The desert beyond the oasis was quiet. The stars reflected in the pool of water, and the gentle breeze carried the scent of alien flowers. Jared and Lyra rested together, their shared experience forging a bond neither could ignore. Lyra spoke softly, almost to herself. "You carried me through the impossible, and yet you never wavered. I respect you, Jared, more than anyone I have ever met." Jared smiled faintly. Humans endure because we must, and we protect because it is right. That's all. She looked at him, her gaze filled with something more than respect now, something tender, something personal. Your people, your spirit, it is rare. I admire you deeply, and I think I am grateful in ways I cannot yet understand. Jared felt his heart tighten. He had saved her life, but he had not expected this. Humans acted without expectation of reward, but the connection forming between them was undeniable. The night passed, quiet and peaceful. By morning, Lyra was stronger. She could sit without assistance and even take small steps. Jared helped her practice walking slowly across the oasis, careful to support her at every turn. She was determined to regain her strength, and he admired her resilience. "You've improved already," he said, smiling. "Humans endure because we never give up, and now so do you." Lyra nodded, her eyes shining with determination and gratitude. "I owe my life to you, but more than that, I owe my understanding of courage, strength, and humanity. You have shown me more than anyone ever has." Jared felt a surge of pride. Humans thrived not only through survival, but by inspiring others, and now he had inspired a queen, an alien queen whose life depended on him, whose respect and admiration were growing with each passing moment. As the day wore on, Jared helped Lyra prepare to leave the oasis. Supplies were gathered, injuries checked, and plans made for the journey beyond. The bond between them had deepened, forged in the desert, strengthened by trust and cemented by mutual respect. Lyra looked at him, her expression soft but serious. "Jared, you have carried me through the desert, healed my body, and inspired my spirit. I cannot forget this. I want to be near you. Always." Jared blinked, taken aback. Humans acted with courage, endurance, and selflessness, but this was new. "Near me?" he asked. "Yes," Lyra said, her amber eyes bright. "You are extraordinary, and I want you in my life, not just as a protector, but as someone more." Jared felt a strange mix of shock, pride, and curiosity. Humans did not seek recognition or reward, but sometimes, the bond formed through shared struggle could become something extraordinary. And perhaps, he thought, this was one of those times. The oasis faded behind them as they prepared to leave. Jared carried Lyra carefully, step by step, across the desert that had tested them so severely. But now, each step felt lighter. They had survived the impossible. They had formed a bond that transcended worlds. And Lyra, she had shown a side of admiration, gratitude, and something more that Jared had never expected. Humans endured. Humans survived. Humans inspired. And now, Jared realized, humans could also change the course of a queen's heart. The desert stretched before them, harsh and unyielding, but the journey ahead no longer felt impossible. Together, they would face whatever came next, step by step, mile by mile, with courage. The desert stretched endlessly before them, but the sun was lower now, casting long golden shadows across the dunes. Jared carried Lyra carefully, step by step, as they left the oasis behind. Her injuries had healed enough for her to walk slowly, but he stayed close, supporting her when the sand threatened to pull her down. "You've done so much for me," Lyra said softly, her amber eyes fixed on the horizon. I cannot thank you enough." Jared shook his head. "You don't need to thank me. Humans survive by helping those who cannot survive alone. That's what we do." Lyra studied him, her gaze steady and serious. "I have seen courage before. Warriors, soldiers, even leaders. but never like you. You endure, you protect, and you inspire. I cannot stop thinking about you." Jared blinked. He was not used to such words. Humans acted without expectation of reward, but her honesty struck him deeply. "Lyra, you've been through so much. You survived because you trusted me. That's what matters." She shook her head gently. "No, it is more than that. You carried me through 90 miles of desert, through storms, predators, and exhaustion. You never faltered, never doubted, never stopped. You saved my life. And not just my life. You gave me hope, safety, and a reason to trust, to admire, even to care." Jared felt a warmth he could not explain. Humans were capable of deep emotion, but even he had not expected this. He stopped for a moment, letting her rest, and looked at her carefully. "Lyra, I did what I had to. You were in danger, you needed help. I didn't do it for anything else." She smiled faintly, a mixture of gratitude and something more tender. "I know, but that is what makes you extraordinary. Not just your strength, but your heart. And I cannot ignore what I feel. She hesitated, her eyes glistening in the sunlight. "I want to be with you. Always." Jared's breath caught. He had survived deserts, storms, and predators, but he had never faced a confession like this. He studied her face, serious, sincere, and full of admiration. Humans acted through actions, not words, but sometimes words were necessary to understand the bond that had formed. "You want to be with me?" he asked quietly. Lyra nodded. "Yes, I want to marry you, Jared. You have saved my life, my people's honor, and shown me what courage truly is. I cannot imagine my life without you." Jared felt a mix of shock and pride. Humans never sought reward. Yet this, the trust and love of a queen, was beyond anything he had imagined. He thought about their journey, the desert miles, the storms, the dangers. Every step had been survival, endurance, and protection. And now it had created a bond stronger than any human or alien could have foreseen. He knelt down beside her, letting her see the sincerity in his eyes. "Lyra, I am a human. I do what is right, what is needed. I never thought. I never imagined. But He paused, struggling for words. Humans were not used to expressing their feelings so openly, but the moment demanded honesty. "I care for you too. Deeply. You trusted me, relied on me, and together we survived the impossible. And I cannot imagine life without you either." Her eyes widened and a soft smile touched her lips. "Then you accept?" Jared nodded. "Yes, I accept. Step by step, mile by mile, we will face the world together. Humans endure, and I will endure with you." Lyra reached out, touching his arm gently. "Then it is decided. You will be by my side, not just as a protector, but as my partner, my equal, and my love." The bond between them was unbreakable now, forged through shared struggle, courage, and mutual respect. The desert had tested them, the heat and sand had challenged them, but it had also united them in a way no ordinary journey could. Humans survived the impossible, and now Jared had proven it to Lyra beyond any doubt. They continued their journey together, moving toward the settlement beyond the dunes. Lyra could walk more easily now, leaning on Jared occasionally, but mostly holding herself upright. They shared stories along the way, laughter in brief moments, and silent admiration in others. Humans endured not just through strength, but through connection, and their bond had become their greatest strength. As they approached the alien settlement that would welcome Lyra home, word of her safe return spread quickly. Her people, who had feared for her life, gathered to see her. Their eyes fell on Jared, the human who had carried their queen across 90 miles of desert, survived storms, and protected her from harm. There was awe in their gaze, respect, and even disbelief. Humans, they realized, were beings of extraordinary courage and resilience. Jared, a lone human, had accomplished what no alien could have imagined possible. Lyra addressed her people, her voice strong despite her exhaustion. This human, Jared, saved my life. He endured what none of us could. He carried me across the desert, protected me, and ensured my survival. He is not just a human, he is extraordinary, and I choose him to be by my side, as my protector, my equal, and my partner for life. The crowd murmured, amazed. Many had heard tales of human resilience, but none had seen it firsthand. Jared stood quietly, letting the words sink in. Humans thrived not through power alone, but through endurance, courage, and the will to protect others. He had proven it. Lyra approached him, taking his hands in hers. Do you understand, Jared? This is more than gratitude. It is my choice, my will, and my heart. I wish to marry you, to stand with you as a queen and a partner. Jared nodded, his voice steady. I understand, Lyra, and I accept. Step by step, mile by mile, we will face everything together. Humans endure, and I will endure with you for the rest of our lives. Her eyes shone, filled with hope, admiration, and love. She had never encountered a human like Jared before, one who could survive the impossible, inspire respect, and awaken feelings she had never known. Now, she would never let him go. The alien queen and the human walked together into the settlement, their bond clear for all to see. People whispered in amazement, but Jared paid little attention. Humans thrived not for recognition, but for action, and his actions had spoken louder than words ever could. Over the next days, preparations for the marriage began. Lyra's people welcomed Jared, teaching him their customs and traditions. He adapted quickly, learning and respecting their ways. Humans were remarkable because they could adjust to any situation, understand others, and find common ground even in alien worlds. Jared's adaptability impressed them as much as his courage had. Lyra spent time by his side, helping him understand her people's history and culture. And Jared, in turn, shared stories of Earth, of humans surviving deserts, storms, and hardships that often seemed impossible. They laughed together, learned from each other, and their bond deepened with every passing moment. On the day of the ceremony, the settlement gathered. The desert sun shone brightly, a gentle breeze carrying the scent of alien flowers. Jared stood tall, calm, and confident. Lyra approached, radiant and strong, her amber eyes shining with love and admiration. The ceremony was simple, yet profound. Words were exchanged, vows spoken, and a promise made, not just of protection, but of partnership, respect, and shared life. Jared had carried Lyra through 90 miles of desert. Now he would carry her through life, mile by mile, step by step, as her partner and equal. When the ceremony ended, Lyra took Jared's hand, pressing it to her heart. You are extraordinary, Jared. You have shown me courage, strength, and humanity like no other. I love you, and I always will. Jared smiled, feeling the weight of their journey, the desert, the storms, and every challenge behind them. And I love you, Lyra. We survived the impossible together, and together, we will face everything that comes next. The crowd cheered, the desert wind carrying their joy. The human who had carried an alien queen through the harshest desert in the galaxy had won not only her life but her heart. And in doing so, he had shown what humans were truly capable of: endurance, courage, compassion, and the ability to inspire trust, admiration, and love across worlds. As the sun set behind the red dunes, Jared and Lyra stood together, hand in hand. The desert that had tested them, challenged them, and threatened their lives had also brought them together. 90 miles of scorching sand, storms, and danger had forged a bond stronger than steel. Humans survived the impossible. Humans endured what others could not. And Jared had carried not only a queen, but a new beginning for both of them. Their journey had ended, but their story had only just begun. Step by step, mile by mile, they would face life together, united in courage, respect, and love. And the galaxy, having witnessed the extraordinary resilience of humans, would never forget it.